Smyrna was not a city known for mercy. It was wealthy, loyal to Rome, and proud of its allegiance. Temples to Caesar rose beside marketplaces. Incense burned not to God, but to the emperor. Loyalty was measured not by belief, but by compliance. To live in Smyrna was to understand one rule clearly. Rome tolerated many gods, but not rivals. Christianity was not merely disliked. It was dangerous, not because it armed rebels, but because it refused the ritual that kept the empire spiritually unified. Caesar is Lord. For Rome, those words were civic glue. For Christians, they were blasphemy. It was in this city, hostile, observant, and unforgiving, that Polycarp lived, taught, and eventually died. Polycarp was born around 69 AD, during a period when Christianity was still illegal and survival depended on silence, community, and discipline. His early life is not preserved in detail, but his spiritual lineage is unmistakable. According to Irenaeus of Lyons, a direct disciple of Polycarp, Polycarp himself had been a disciple of the Apostle John, the same John traditionally associated with the Gospel of John and the book of Revelation. This mattered. It meant Polycarp was not preaching rumor. He was not recycling tradition. He had heard the faith from the last living witnesses of Christ. Irenaeus later wrote that Polycarp spoke often of his conversations with John and others who had seen Jesus with their own eyes, not as legend but as memory, tone, gestures, words remembered decades later. This placed Polycarp in a rare position. He stood at the intersection between apostolic Christianity and the expanding Gentile church. He did not invent doctrine, he guarded it. By the early 2nd century, Polycarp was appointed bishop of Smyrna, a role far more dangerous than modern audiences imagine. A bishop was not a public figure. He was a target. The bishop organized secret gatherings, preserved apostolic teaching, settled disputes, and protected doctrine from corruption. He also bore responsibility when persecution came. Roman authorities did not hunt scattered believers first. They went for leadership. Polycarp's authority was moral, not political. He did not rule with force. He ruled by example, and by a reputation so firm that even his enemies recognized his integrity. According to early Christian accounts preserved in the Martyrdom of Polycarp, his life was marked by consistency. No scandal, no compromise, no ambition for recognition. That consistency would later become his indictment. Persecution did not arrive suddenly. It simmered. Christians were accused of atheism for rejecting Roman gods, cannibalism, a misunderstanding of the Eucharist, and disloyalty for refusing emperor worship. Public hostility grew. Informants multiplied. Fear spread. When arrests began, Polycarp did not flee immediately. According to the Martyrdom of Polycarp, he initially remained in Smyrna, encouraging believers to stand firm. Only after repeated insistence from others did he withdraw to a nearby village. This was not fear. It was stewardship. Yet even in hiding, Polycarp understood what was coming. Shortly before his arrest, Polycarp experienced a dream recorded in early church testimony. His pillow burned beneath his head upon waking. He spoke calmly to those around him. "I must be burned alive." This was not dramatized prediction. It was preparation. The location was exposed, not by Roman brilliance, but by betrayal. A young slave tortured by authorities revealed Polycarp's hiding place. Roman soldiers arrived not as if hunting a criminal, but as if capturing a dangerous fugitive, armed, alert, prepared for resistance. They found none. Polycarp greeted them calmly. He ordered food to be prepared for the soldiers and requested 1 hour to pray. They granted him 2, according to the Martyrdom of Polycarp. His prayer filled the house, long composed, encompassing the living and the dead, the Church Universal, and even his captors. Some present later regretted coming for him. As Polycarp was transported into Smyrna, the magistrate Herod and his father Nicedes attempted persuasion. Not violence, persuasion. Swear by the fortune of Caesar. Say, away with the atheists. What harm is there? Polycarp remained silent. When pressed, he responded with clarity, not rage. The stadium was full. Public executions were not merely punishment, they were theater. Crowds gathered not for justice, but for reassurance. Rome needed to show that defiance ended here. As Polycarp entered, a voice, reported by multiple early witnesses, was heard. Be strong, Polycarp, and play the man. Whether heard externally or inwardly, the message was received without panic. The Proconsul Statius Quadratus addressed him. The exchange that followed has echoed through centuries. Swear by the genius of Caesar. Revile Christ. Polycarp answered, 86 years I have served him, and he has done me no wrong. How can I blaspheme my king who saved me? The proconsul threatened beasts. Polycarp replied calmly, call them. Fire was threatened next. Polycarp answered, you threaten me with fire that burns for an hour and is quenched, but you know nothing of the fire of the coming judgment. This was not defiance. It was certainty. The crowd erupted. Asians, Jews, pagans. Voices united in one cry. Burn him alive. Wood was gathered quickly. Polycarp removed his outer garments. He refused to be nailed. According to the Martyrdom of Polycarp, he said, leave me as I am. He who grants me to endure the fire will enable me to remain unmoved. When the fire was lit, witnesses recorded something unexpected. The flames did not consume him. Instead, they arched around his body like a sail filled with wind. His body did not burn as flesh, but glowed like gold refined in a furnace. A fragrance filled the air, not burning flesh, but incense. This account appears in the Martyrdom of Polycarp, one of the earliest preserved martyrdom texts in Christian history, circulated widely among second-century churches. The executioner was ordered to finish it. A dagger pierced Polycarp's body. So much blood flowed that it extinguished the flames. Only then did death arrive. Rome burned his body, but the church preserved his testimony. Polycarp did not scream. He did not recant. He did not negotiate. He simply refused to move. Polycarp exposes a faith that modern comfort struggles to recognize. A Christianity that does not ask, what will this cost me? But states, whatever costs. His martyrdom stands not as inspiration, but as indictment. When Polycarp's body fell still, the stadium did not erupt in celebration. It emptied. Executions were meant to reassure the public that Rome remained in control. But this one did the opposite. There was no panic, no plea, no visible defeat. There was only composure. And that disturbed witnesses far more than resistance would have. Rome had killed many Christians before Polycarp. But Polycarp was different. He was old. He was known. And he did not break. According to the Martyrdom of Polycarp, the authorities ordered his body burned completely, not out of efficiency, but fear. They feared the Christians would gather his remains and honor them. This fear reveals more than Rome intended. Rome understood something early. Martyrdom multiplies belief. After Polycarp's death, a dispute emerged. The Jewish leaders of Smyrna, according to the same early source, urged Roman officials not to release his body to the Christians. Their reasoning was simple and revealing, lest they abandon the crucified one and begin worshiping this man. This accusation misunderstands Christianity while simultaneously acknowledging its power. Christians did not worship martyrs, but they remember them. Memory was dangerous. The Roman world controlled people by erasing the past and reshaping loyalty. Christianity resisted this by preserving testimony. Martyrs became anchors, proof that faith was not theoretical. Rome feared memory because memory outlives force. Eventually, Polycarp's remains were partially recovered. According to the Martyrdom of Polycarp, the Christians gathered his bones, describing them as more valuable than precious stones. This language was not idolatry. It was testimony. These bones represented a faith that did not bend. But more important than the bones was the document. The Martyrdom of Polycarp was not a legend written centuries later. It circulated within decades of his death, among churches that still remember the apostles. It served several purposes. It preserved historical fact. It instructed believers on how to face persecution. It drew boundaries. Polycarp is praised, but suicide-seeking martyrdom is condemned. This matters. Early Christianity did not glorify death recklessly. It honored faithfulness under pressure, not obsession with suffering. One of the most overlooked sections of the Martyrdom of Polycarp is its warning. It condemns a man named Quintus, who voluntarily presented himself for execution, then recanted when faced with beasts. The text states plainly, Christians should not seek martyrdom, but when it comes, they must not flee truth. This balance shaped Christian ethics for centuries. Polycarp did not chase death. He simply refused to escape obedience. Many Christians died before Polycarp. Many died after. But Polycarp's death carried unique weight for three reasons. One, apostolic continuity. He represented a living bridge to Christ's original witnesses. Killing him symbolically severed Rome from the roots of Christianity. But the attempt failed. Two, public refusal. He did not die in secret. His confession was heard publicly by a crowd trained to mock weakness. Three, theological clarity. His words at trial articulated a Christianity that could not coexist with emperor worship. Polycarp did not attack Rome. He simply refused its ultimate claim. Rome asked Christians for one thing: say the words, burn incense, swear loyalty. Live, Polycarp's refusal exposed the real conflict. This was not about politics. It was about lordship. Rome could tolerate Jesus as a teacher. It could tolerate him as a moral voice. It could not tolerate him as Lord, because lordship demands allegiance, and allegiance competes. Within years of Polycarp's death, persecution did not weaken Christianity. It strengthened it. Churches copied and shared his martyrdom account. His story traveled faster than Roman decrees. In private homes, believers read his words aloud, not to glorify death, but to prepare for truth. Polycarp's martyrdom became a template. Calm before arrest prayer for enemies clear, confession no compromise. Later martyrs would echo this pattern, not because they were copying literature, but because Polycarp had shown them how a Christian dies. One of Polycarp's most important legacies lived on in Irenaeus of Lyons. Irenaeus later wrote extensively against heresies threatening the church. His authority rested not on philosophy, but lineage. He had heard Polycarp. He knew what the apostles taught. This matters because persecution was not the only threat facing early Christianity. False teaching was equally dangerous. Polycarp had guarded doctrine with his life. Irenaeus guarded it with his pen. Martyrdom preserved truth. Teaching protected it. Polycarp's death did something unsettling. It forced the church to ask hard questions. What is worth dying for? What must never be surrendered? Where is the line compromise cannot cross? The answers were not abstract. They were written in ash and blood. Polycarp's Christianity was not designed for safety. It was not built to survive empires. It was built to outlast them. Modern audiences often mistake early Christianity for naive idealism. The reality was sharper. Early Christians understood power, violence, and consequences intimately. Polycarp did not die because he misunderstood Rome. He died because he understood it perfectly. Polycarp was not a young radical. He was approximately 86 years old at death. That detail strips away romanticism. This was not youthful recklessness. This was lifelong conviction. He had buried friends. He had seen persecution cycles rise and fall. He had watched false teachers come and go, and at the end he still chose Christ. That endurance made his martyrdom unbearable for Rome. Youth can be dismissed as passion. Age cannot. Polycarp leaves behind an uncomfortable inheritance, a Christianity that does not negotiate identity, a faith that does not bend to survive, a belief that measures truth by obedience, not outcomes. This kind of faith cannot be easily adapted. It resists rebranding. Centuries later, the book of Revelation's message to Smyrna gained new resonance. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. Whether written before or remembered after Polycarp's death, the words became embodied in him. Smyrna became a symbol, not of defeat, but of fidelity. Polycarp's life does not ask whether belief is sincere. It asks whether belief is sovereign. Who decides truth? Who defines loyalty? Who receives final allegiance? Rome demanded a gesture. Polycarp gave a life. The methods of pressure have evolved. The demand has not. Say the words. Blend in. Redefine truth. Survive. Polycarp refused. Not loudly, not theatrically, but completely. Fire failed. Threats failed. Age failed. Only obedience remained. And that obedience outlived the empire that tried to erase it. Polycarp's death did not end with smoke and ash. It hardened into theology. Early Christianity did not systematize martyrdom through councils or creeds. It absorbed martyrdom through memory. The stories were repeated not to glorify pain, but to clarify loyalty. Polycarp's execution became one of the earliest and clearest templates for how Christians understood faithfulness under absolute pressure. According to the Martyrdom of Polycarp, his death was not treated as tragedy. It was treated as witness. The Greek word martyria does not mean death. It means testimony. Polycarp's death was valuable because it said something Rome could not silence. It said Christ was Lord even when Caesar demanded proof. Rome excelled at erasure. Names were scratched from records. Monuments were destroyed. Memory was controlled. But Polycarp's execution achieved the opposite effect. It etched his confession into the bloodstream of the church. The Roman state could burn bodies. It could not burn meaning. Eusebius of Caesarea, writing in the early 4th century in ecclesiastical history, preserves Polycarp's martyrdom not as folklore, but as record. He places it alongside other early witnesses to demonstrate continuity. Faith passed down through cost, not comfort. This continuity terrified Rome. Most executed criminals vanish into history. Polycarp did not. His survival in memory was not accidental. 3 forces preserved him. Proximity to the apostles' public confession without compromise a church that refused to forget. Irenaeus, who had listened to Polycarp as a boy, later testified that Polycarp's teachings aligned perfectly with apostolic doctrine. This mattered because heresies were spreading. Gnosticism, secret knowledge, alter Christs. Polycarp's life anchored truth in lived obedience. He did not debate theology at death. He embodied it. Polycarp's martyrdom forced Christianity to define itself by exclusion. It learned what it could not be. It could not be a private philosophy, a cultural accessory, a negotiable identity. Faith could not exist as a compartment. It demanded sovereignty. The refusal to burn incense was not stubbornness. It was theological clarity. Incense was worship. Worship defined allegiance. Allegiance could not be divided. Polycarp's silence on negotiation spoke louder than argument. Roman authorities believed compromise was mercy. Say the words. Live. This was presented as peace. Polycarp exposed the lie beneath it. Peace without truth is submission. Life without allegiance is survival, not faith. The empire offered existence at the price of identity. Polycarp rejected existence on those terms. This rejection remains Christianity's most uncomfortable inheritance. Polycarp cannot be easily adapted. He cannot be reframed as metaphor. He cannot be softened into inspiration. His decision was literal. Modern faith often reinterprets martyrdom symbolically. Dying to ego, surrendering habits, spiritual discipline. Those interpretations may have value, but Polycarp strips away abstraction. He did not die inwardly. He died publicly. This makes his story dangerous in every generation that confuses belief with convenience. Polycarp does not ask whether belief is sincere. He asks whether belief is final. Who decides truth when consequences are real? Who defines loyalty when survival is offered as bait? Rome demanded a gesture that cost nothing physically. Polycarp understood it would cost everything spiritually. That understanding separates faith from affiliation. Polycarp did not frame his death as courage. There is no record of dramatic speeches or emotional display according to the martyrdom of Polycarp. His demeanor was measured, prayerful, and controlled. This was not heroism. It was obedience. Heroism seeks recognition. Obedience accepts obscurity. Rome expected resistance. It received surrender, but not the kind it wanted. Polycarp surrendered his life. He did not surrender his allegiance. Polycarp's execution exposes a myth that persists across centuries. the idea that faith can remain neutral under power. Rome did not persecute Christians because they were violent. It persecuted them because they were exclusive. They would not add Caesar to their altar. Polycarp's refusal proves that neutrality is an illusion when ultimate claims are made. Every system demands a highest loyalty. Christianity's loyalty conflicted directly with Rome's. That conflict never ended. Only the language changed. After Polycarp, martyrdom did not become spectacle. It became standard. Christians did not rush toward death, but they stopped running from it. The model was set. Faithfulness mattered more than longevity. Integrity outweighed preservation. Polycarp's death clarified the cost of leadership. Bishops were not administrators. They were examples. Authority was validated by willingness to suffer, not ability to command. This shaped Christian leadership for centuries. Polycarp's Christianity was not designed to blend. It was designed to endure heat. The early church did not grow because it was safe. It grew because it was coherent. Its members knew what they believed and what they would not trade away. Polycarp's death taught them that faith without cost collapses under pressure. Rome applied pressure. Faith remained. Fire destroys what is already divided. Polycarp was not divided. There was no competing loyalty inside him. No internal negotiation. No hidden exit strategy. His confession was settled long before the stadium. The fire failed because the decision had already been made. This is why the execution required a blade. The fire could not finish what doubt had not started. The preservation of Polycarp's martyrdom was itself an act of defiance. Christians copied the account carefully. They read it aloud. They taught their children his words. They gathered annually to remember, not his death, but his witness. This remembrance was not ritual. It was resistance. Rome erased criminals. The church preserved martyrs. One controlled fear. The other cultivated conviction. Polycarp's shadow stretches far beyond Smyrna. It reaches every era where faith is tolerated only if it stays quiet. It confronts every church tempted to soften truth for acceptance. His life declares that Christianity cannot exist merely as moral agreement or cultural participation. It must decide who rules. Polycarp never claimed superiority. He never insulted Rome. He never attacked the crowd. His refusal was clean. This makes his witness more unsettling. There's no villain speech to dismiss, no fanaticism to critique, only a calm refusal to deny Christ. Polycarp's death establishes a brutal metric. Faith is measured not by expression, but by endurance, not by what is said when it is safe, but by what is refused when escape is offered. Polycarp did not ask whether Christ was worth dying for. He lived as if the question had already been answered. Rome is gone. Its emperors are names in textbooks. Its temples are ruins. Its laws are artifacts. Polycarp's confession remains. Christ is still confessed as Lord, still exclusive, still demanding. The empire that demanded incense is dust. The faith that refused it still speaks. Polycarp cannot be honored selectively. He cannot be admired without implication. To remember him honestly is to confront what belief costs when power demands submission. His life asks a final, uncomfortable question. When belief becomes inconvenient, when obedience becomes dangerous, when silence buys safety, Polycarp answered with his body. Threats failed, fire failed, time failed, only allegiance endured, and that allegiance did not burn.